Hey guys, this is Kristen Comstock with the Now What podcast, and I am here with a very dear friend of mine, Debbie Price. We are here to talk about some of the hard topics that as women and just in general as people we don't always talk about. So we're going to talk about miscarriage or abortion. We might even discuss rape or molestation, what our role is as women in this world, what our role is maybe as a wife or a mom, our identity as a woman. So we're going to dive into some really deep topics. So we'd love for you to join us today. And like I said, I'm here with Debbie, and we know each other pretty well. But just to introduce you, so you have been married for how long?
33 years.
33 years
Yes.
to your husband.
Yep.
And how many kids do you have?
We have two boys, and then 3 in heaven.
Okay.
So
And how old are your 2 boys that are here on earth?
my boys are 27 and 25, almost 26.
So they're now adults.
They are.
If you consider
They
them
are.
adults.
Yes, they're still my babies.
Yes. Okay. And then tell us a little bit about your background. Like, what have you done in the past? You have a dual degree in what?
I have a dual degree in early childhood elementary education. And when I first got that degree, I taught school for many years, taught 3rd grade, preschool, several other grades kind of in between.
Yeah.
And I did that until I began having children. And then I kind of transitioned from that into teaching women's Bible studies and leading women's groups.
And you've led women's ministry teams.
Yes.
And you've taught a lot. And so, yeah.
So
And
I'm still using my degree.
Yes.
It's just in a different form.
Hey, sometimes you have to use that. Like, hey, listen, ladies, listen up here.
That's right. Sometimes the kids are a little easier.
Yes, we can get a little chatty. So, okay, awesome. And your true passion, kind of what we had talked about, is you really love to see women really develop and really capture and hold on to and become their true identity in Christ, what God has meant them to be and do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That triggers something in me. I get excited when a woman gets it.
Yes, yes. And when they get excited about what they're doing.
Yes.
Whether it's becoming a mom and being a stay-at-home mom, or working, or starting a podcast.
Yes. Whatever that passion is, whatever she wants to do, whatever she's passionate about.
Right.
Is, yeah.
I love that. So today, what we're actually going to be talking about, and what subject we're going to be diving into, is we're actually going to be talking about miscarriage, multiple or one, but miscarriages in general. And so before we get started, I want to just read some statistics, because even though it's talked about, it's not talked about.
Right. Absolutely.
You hear it, but then you don't hear it, or you hear it talked about, but it's not really, you don't hear anyone really diving into this subject and talking about the effects of miscarriage. So a couple of statistics. So miscarriage is so if someone doesn't know what a miscarriage is, it's usually when they lose a child before 20 weeks is the scientific definition of it. And so for women that know they're pregnant, which a lot of times women don't know they're pregnant. So there's probably more miscarriages out there than what the statistics read, because sometimes women don't know they're pregnant yet. But about every 10 to 15 out of 100 pregnancies end in a miscarriage, which is 10 to 15%, which is,
That's big.
I think, is kind of high. Like, it's a lot more common than what you would think. 10%, it would be talked about a lot more. And then most miscarriages happen before the 12th week of pregnancy, but for the 13th to 19th week, every 1 in 5 out of 100 pregnancies end in miscarriage, which is still, again, I think
That's
a
high.
high percentage. When you think about being up to 19 weeks. That's 5%. That's a pretty high percentage. So just want to give our listeners some statistics of miscarriages. So before we dive into the subject, I want to ask you, in regards to this topic, what was kind of your now what moment in regards to miscarriages?
Sure. When I went through my miscarriages, it was painful. And so it was, and like you said, nobody talked about it. Nobody knew what to say or how to say. So I just really kind of just stuffed the pain and carried it. And people would try to be comforting and would try to say comforting things, but they didn't really get it. And until one day I met a woman who helped me grieve the loss. I didn't know, this is going to sound crazy, but I didn't know I had the right to grieve over a miscarriage because I never had the baby in my arms or anything like that. And so many people just kind of brushed it off as nothing. I thought something was broken and, I'm wrong. You're all messed up
in the wrong
because I'm feeling such anguish over this.
Right.
And so she taught me how to, that it was okay to grieve and how to walk through that loss. And
I love that. And so we're going to dive more into that. So I want to first by asking, okay, so you and your husband are married.
Yes.
And you had been married for how long before you decided you wanted to start trying to have kids?
We were probably married 3 years. I want to say it was 3 years. And then we decided, okay, now it's time to start our family. And so we began.
So you guys kind of got settled in and you started trying to get pregnant.
Right.
So when did you get pregnant and what did that look like?
Well, it actually took me an entire year to get pregnant. And I got pregnant, took the pregnancy test, all the positive, I got excited and started telling a few people, and that one ended in miscarriage.
And how old were you?
I was, oh gosh, now you can ask me with numbers, probably 26, maybe
25, 26-ish.
Yeah, somewhere
okay.
in there.
And so at this time, you're how many weeks pregnant? You've told a good bit of, how many people would you say you told?
Told, the moms and the dads,
okay.
and best friends and
close family and friends knew at this point.
Yes.
Okay.
And more people knew about the miscarriage than they actually knew about the actual pregnancy. Yeah.
So how many weeks did you miscarry?
I was somewhere between 9 and 12 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, we couldn't totally determine what that was.
Okay, so let's get into that.
Okay.
So what did that look like? So you're excited, you got pregnant, and
yes.
you had the miscarriage. What did that look like on a medical perspective? You went to the doctor. What happened? How did you find out?
Right. Well, I went to the doctor when the test came up positive, and I went and took the pregnancy test there and all the things that they did there, and everything was fine. Everything came up positive, and it was like 2 or 3 weeks later before my next appointment that I started spotting. And so then I went to the doctor, and they checked for a heartbeat to see if because I believe the heart starts beating like about 5 weeks. Yeah. So I knew I was beyond that point. But so they checked for a heartbeat and could not see a heartbeat. And then they said that it would be good if I had a D&C done. And I had no clue what a D&C was.
And they didn't explain it to you.
They didn't explain it. They didn't tell me anything about the procedure. And you would have thought, being an adult, that I would have understood what a D&C was, or I would have even asked questions, but I was so stunned that I just lost my baby that I didn't even ask questions.
Right.
And so they gave me a half of a Valium and said, okay, we'll be back in about 30 minutes. And
were you by yourself?
I was by myself, but I had called Roy to come up to the office, and they had suggested that I call him. So he came up and he sat with me for a little bit, and the nurse comes in and she says, okay, we're ready to do the procedure. And I think the doctor asked Roy, do you want to stay in here, with her, or do you want to go out? And I even told him, I said, no, Roy, just it'll be fine. They tell me it's going to be just a short procedure.
Right.
Go ahead and wait in the waiting room. Well, the nurse grabs his arm and pulls him and says, no, you're coming with us.
Oh, gosh.
And so he was kind of like, well, okay. And
Right.
I'm very, very.
And at the time, did he even really know what it was?
No,
Yeah.
we were clueless as to actually what that procedure entails.
Right.
I don't know why I didn't know. I just didn't. So Roy comes in with me, and I praise God that he was in there with me. That was probably one of the most painful procedures I've ever had to endure. And a half of a Valium doesn't touch it.
Well,
So-
I know it doesn't, because I recently had one that was a full Valium, and that didn't do anything. So
No.
I can only imagine that you felt every ounce of pain that you
I did.
experienced at the time.
And so that was very traumatic.
And I was just going to ask, like, the experience as a whole, and again, just sticking with the first miscarriage, was it traumatic? And what was it like physically, like being in the office? Very clinical?
That was very clinical. The nurse and the doctor, I mean, they were very nice. But, and the one nurse, especially the nurse that grabbed Roy and said, no, you're
Right.
coming in here. She did have compassion. But it was still just very, and you're numb.
Right.
You've just been told
You're in
you're
shock.
no longer going to give birth to this baby.
Yeah.
The one that you worked so hard for a year, to help come
And it's
about.
a state of shock.
You're numb. You're just numb. You're mind.
You're
not
trying
thinking.
to process,
Yes.
because it is so clinical, and you go in and you're so excited, and it's stripped from you in seconds.
Yes.
And your mind is trying to process what's happening.
Right.
Meanwhile, the doctors have other appointments to get to.
Right. They've got to
they're
go
like,
deliver babies.
And you're not going to have a baby. And
Yes.
so now this is what we're going to do. Do this, this, and this. And you're on your way. And you're left like, well, what the heck?
Right.
You know?
Absolutely. And so I was very thankful Roy was there, because had he not been, I could not have imagined going through that without him there.
So how did it affect you, before we get to any of the other pregnancies, but how did it affect you, that experience, that first, because for you, unfortunately, some people, they have a baby, then they have a miscarriage, but for you, unfortunately, this was your first encounter with pregnancy.
Yes.
So how did that affect you going into, the next decisions you made, if y'all were going to try to have more kids, or you weren't going to, or what?
Yeah, it was terrifying, because every month, it could be, but then if it is, am I going to lose it? And so that was always in the back of my mind, was if I get pregnant again, will I be able to get pregnant again? I don't know, or I didn't know at the time. And so that made, even for Roy and I, for trying to get pregnant, it became very clinical, and it became my sole focus.
Yeah, because you were so close to this dream that you had.
Yes.
It's a dream. And I know in conversation, maybe not for everybody, or everybody's not in a place where they're ready to have a child.
Right.
But for you and where you were at in your life, this was like a dream. And this was something you truly wanted, desired, and were trying to accomplish.
Yes.
And so then when it got stripped from you, and now you were like, well.
Yeah. Well, there was a piece of me missing. There was a hole. Actually, the first hole started. And but I covered it up. I covered that pain up with the whole process of trying to get pregnant.
And I like how you say that, a whole, because it was it's literally a piece of you that's now missing. That's not with you in the physical.
Yes. And like I said too, and with the DNC, they're literally taking pieces of you out.
Right.
So it was, there was that was I still look at it even today, and I'm not traumatized by it, but the trauma is still, I can still remember it.
Yeah, it's one of those memories that you can, if you think on it hard enough, or like
Oh
right
yeah,
now where
I could
you
send
can
me back
smell
to
it.
it. Oh yes,
You can
yes.
smell the smells and
Yeah.
feel how you felt and the temperature in the air. And
Yes.
yeah,
And even when I would go to the doctor's office and they would want to, if all the rooms are full and they would go, oh, well, you're going to come into this room, and I'd be like, no, I will wait. I wouldn't allow them to even put me in that room again.
yeah, because all your memory was there from that.
Right.
So let's talk about your second pregnancy.
Okay.
How long did it take? When did you decide? First, when did you decide that you were going to start trying?
Well, we pretty much started trying again immediately. We had to wait, I don't know, a few weeks afterward, and then we began. And like I said, it became
an obsession
for me.
Yeah.
And
which takes a little bit of the fun out of it.
It does. It became very clinical. And so we started trying for again to get pregnant, and then again it took another entire year to get pregnant. And again I would take the pregnancy test, got excited, I was smart. And we didn't tell anybody. We told my parents and his parents, but then we asked them, just keep this
to yourself.
And I wasn't going to say anything until about probably 12 weeks into it. And so I'd learned my lesson the first time.
Yeah. So, and then at what point, because your second pregnancy, you also lost the baby.
Miscarried again.
And so at what point, how many weeks was that?
Again, in that 9 to 10, 9, 10, 12 week.
So you've gotten pregnant once and you lost your first child. Mm-hmm. You got pregnant a second time. You lost your second child. What did it look like after that? Because I can imagine after that you could feel discouraged and...
Oh,
I mean, you could feel, I'm sure you felt
like a failure.
Yeah.
I felt like a failure. I felt like I couldn't be, you're a woman. You're supposed to be able to get pregnant.
For sure.
When you want to get pregnant.
Yes.
You're supposed to be, that's the next natural thing that you're supposed to do. And so I felt like a huge failure. And the doctors could not tell me why it was taking so long to get pregnant and why I would miscarry.
No diagnosis.
Nothing. I was a statistic.
Yeah. You were the 10 to 15%.
Yes.
So just want to pause on that because you said something that I think is so important, and I know that it's applicable to myself, and I'm sure there's friends and family that don't even know this about me. But I just had my very first miscarriage. Mm-hmm. And what you said was, it is so much of a desire of our soul as a woman. And it is something we feel like almost to an extent you can feel like you have to do. Like, this is what I was created to do.
Right.
What do you say to the women that, to a me, that has had a miscarriage and doesn't have any children yet, that so desire to bear a child on their own, that just we're not there yet?
Right. I understand because I've walked in your shoes. Mm-hmm. I understand that longing. I understand that desire and that passion and that drive to want to have that baby. And
social media it didn't exist probably when you were going through your first pregnancies.
No.
And now, we've talked about there's something in the water, and, you see social media and pregnancy announcement and this, and I'm having a baby and I'm having a baby. It's
like, oh my gosh. Yes.
Well, shoot. Everyone's having a baby except
the dogs
for me.
Are having babies.
Yeah. My donkey got pregnant. My cows are pregnant.
Exactly.
True story.
Yes.
So, I mean, what do you speak into those women that feel, I praise God that I have him, because I think if I didn't rely so heavily on him, it would have drugged me into a deep state of depression, if I'm being really honest. And it really could have. And I had a husband that was very supportive, and a group of friends that were really supportive, and have a great relationship with the Lord.
Right.
But to the women out there that maybe don't have one or any of those things,
well,
what do you say?
Birthing a child from your womb does not make you a woman. It just doesn't. Birthing a child does not solidify that you now have arrived. It is a blessing. It is a blessing to give birth. And but I have many friends that have not been able to physically give birth to children. They have acquired children through adoption. Some, in my case, I didn't have a daughter, but I get to have what I deem as spiritual daughters that the Lord gives me to love on, and you being one of them. And so you can mother. If that is a deep, deep desire for you, and your body just does not produce the offspring that you want, there are many, many different ways to satisfy that passion and that desire to have a child.
And it doesn't make it, and I would add to that, it doesn't make it any less of a loss. It's probably not going to completely fill that specific void.
Right.
It's going to fulfill you in a different way.
It will, but having a child won't. If you've got a hole, I don't know how else to explain it, but having a child won't necessarily fill
and
that
it's even
hole.
not going to fulfill, like in your case, your two boys that you have here on earth don't fill the void of the children that you've lost in a miscarriage.
Absolutely not.
It's a different hole. It's a different size hole.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're right.
So going back to, so you had a second miscarriage, just stopping on these two miscarriages that you had, how did it affect your marriage? Like, did it create distance?
Absolutely.
Was there an effect on your marriage at all?
It was a really, really tough time in our marriage because, again, as I said, nobody really knew how to talk to me about miscarriages, and so therefore they didn't talk about it, and I didn't talk about it. It happened, it went, a week it was done, and then everybody's gone
back to normal
and moving on. Right. Even though in my heart I'm dying. Right. And then even Roy and I didn't really know how to talk about it. Right. He knew I was upset. I honestly didn't even know if he was upset because he's the guy that keeps the wheels going, and you know, he's got to be strong and keep everything together. Moving. Right. So he didn't I did not know how to grieve, and we did not know how to grieve together. And so trying to become pregnant became very, very clinical. It was no longer, the act of making love. It was like, okay, this is the time.
Let's get to business. Like, we got to make this happen.
Right.
Which, like I said, takes the fun out of it.
It does. It does. And puts a lot of pressure on him. Yeah. You know, because every month when it wouldn't happen, I would be mad, angry, upset. And he would take that personally as if he were failing.
Or it's something that's just kind of inconsolable too. Like, it is. As a husband, as a protector, they want to fix the problem. They want to help you. They want to make it better. They want you to be happy. And so they can be with you in it. Right. But there's really nothing that you can do. There's nothing, like we were I think we talked about before we got started with this conversation, we were talking about how it's completely outside of your control. Yes. It's like, usually you say, it's your body, control what you're doing. Use self-control, right? Like, you
do
teach
this
your kids,
and this will happen.
Right. You teach your kids, like, keep your hands to yourself, Right. And so it's our body, and we have no control of what's happening. And so it's kind of like this weird thing where you want to control it, and there's nothing you can do. Right. There's nothing you could change or do. It's your body.
Absolutely nothing. And when the doctors are telling you, sorry, there's not.
It's the 10% chance.
What's the answer? What's the answer? Sorry, we don't have one for you.
Right. And so for you specifically, and some people get diagnoses, which can obviously help them and their family with, treatment or medication or whatever. For you, you had the 2 miscarriages, And then you guys decided to kind of seek out fertility.
Yes.
They didn't diagnose you. They did give you some medication. But finally, your third pregnancy, tell us about that.
Yes. My third pregnancy, I was able to conceive. And it was kind of cool because it's actually, I found out I was pregnant on Valentine's Day.
Oh,
so that was kind of fun. So I with the medication, and I had to go through the medication about 3 times, I think it was. And even through all that, it was very clinical. I had to wake up, take my temperature, log everything, do all this stuff, and it would be like, okay, Roy, temperature's up, let's go. But it.
He's like, wow, this getting pregnant thing's not as fun as I thought.
Yeah, exactly. It was honestly a lot of hard work. It really was. And so we became pregnant, and I was honestly probably up until after 12 weeks. If I really want to be honest, I was terrified my whole pregnancy.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, in the back of my mind,
yes,
it was always, will this go
happen
through? Yeah.
I was just going to ask you, so you had your third pregnancy. We know that you had Ryan.
Yes.
But during that pregnancy, was there fear? Were you afraid? Were you kind of like on your tippy toes waiting for something to happen? Like, what were your emotions like through? And was it healthy pregnancy?
I had a very healthy pregnancy. Everything went well. Everything was going great. I personally was healthy. Ryan was growing well. But I always still had that little bit of something in the back of my mind because I had lost the other two.
Right.
That you could lose this one. And so I don't know that ever really fully went away. I truly believed he was going to be okay.
I was just going to
it was a weird
Yes,
dichotomy.
I was just going to say you had the fear, which ultimately really was the enemy just trying to attack you and make you nervous.
Yes.
And whatever the case may be. But, I know you had mentioned that you really believed that he was the child that God had promised you.
Yes, because I was at a women's retreat, and I remember, I can't specifically remember what the lady was talking about, but we were praying and I think asking God for certain things. And so I visually saw a baby in my arms. And I remember my aunt even came up to me and she says, Debbie, you won't be going skiing with us in February. And I was like, well, why can't I go? She goes, because you're going to be pregnant. And I was like, oh, okay. And that's why, and we did. I found out February 14th that I was pregnant with Ryan. So I was putting those two combination things together as well as confirmation that this child would survive. And, I would carry him to term.
So God offered you a form of peace through this pregnancy,
yes.
Although because of your past experience, you still had that fear. But gosh, I can't imagine maybe if you didn't have that peace or that, confirmation that he was going to be born and you'd have him in your arms. I can't imagine maybe how much more fear you would have that affected you.
Yeah, because when he was born nearly 3 weeks early. And I got to see him for about 10 seconds before they whisked him away. And I didn't see him for another 24 hours.
Oh my gosh.
And because he had some breathing problems and some things like that. But I just knew deep in my heart that the Lord had said that this one was going to be the one. And and he was.
So
it came out fine.
You have Ryan.
I have Ryan, yeah.
And you're happy. You're a happy mama.
I am. I'm going along about my life.
Tell me about at what point Wesley is coming along in this picture.
That's right. Well, he was our surprise baby because
I love that.
I was nursing. And I had nursed Ryan for over a year, and they talk about sometimes how you can't get pregnant when you're nursing and all that. Well, for me, I'm like, well, I can't get pregnant. I had to do.
You're like, I'm not worried.
I'm
not worried about it.
I'm not worried about nothing. And I remember just being really tired and not feeling good. And I was talking to a girlfriend, and she goes, Debbie, you ought to take a pregnancy test. I'm like, I am not going to take another one of those.
Yes.
Because first off.
Because I was going to say, how many pregnancy tests had you taken?
I should have bought stock.
Yeah.
In pregnancy tests.
Because when you so desire to have a child, you're like,
I'm
maybe if I just think hard enough that I'm pregnant and I take this pregnancy
Yes.
test, it's going to have a little
You can have the plus
on
sign
it.
on it, right? You can will it into being, but that's not true.
Right.
That's not true. So I brought him into, anyway, long story short, I went ahead and took the pregnancy test and ended up, it was positive. And I actually took a second one because I didn't think the first one was right, because there was no way that I was going to get pregnant without help.
Right.
And so I ended up going to the doctor, and we kind of cycled through some stuff. And he says, well, you're about 3 months in. And I was like, I'm what? And so
Did you
was
just lose it?
Oh, I did. I was actually past the time of when I had miscarried before.
Okay.
The first 2 pregnancies. So I was past.
How did that feel?
Oh, well, that was exciting.
Right.
You still get the thing in the back of your mind, but it was still exciting. That one was fun because I didn't even try. And so I just really looked at it as like just the Lord's blessing, and that he didn't even allow me to find out until I was past the point of the other miscarriages.
Right. Which I love that. That's just a little gift he gave
Yes.
you, wrapped up with a little bow that you didn't even know you were going to get.
Yes, absolutely. We call him our Christmas surprise because I found out around Christmas.
So, okay. So, and you have Wesley.
I have Wesley.
So
yeah.
you have 2 healthy boys.
Yes.
About how many months apart?
They're 21, 22 months
Okay.
apart.
So
somewhere around there.
just shy of 2 years
Just
apart.
shy of 2 years, yeah.
Okay. And so you're happy. You have
Yep.
2 children.
Yep.
You have 2 in heaven.
Yes.
And did you want more children?
I did. I originally wanted 6. I'm not sure that Roy was on board with the 6, but I really, I had desired a large family. And
You just tell him half of what you actually want. Like I tell Cody I want 12.
Yes.
And then I'm guaranteed my 6.
Yes. I do that when I go to the store.
Compromise.
I'm like, hey, I spent $200. No, really, it was $100, so I feel better. But anyway, we Wesley was probably about 3
Okay.
or 4, and I became pregnant again.
Okay.
And we weren't trying.
Okay.
We had just kind of given up. My body was going to get pregnant when my body got pregnant, and we weren't going to stop it, and we weren't going to
Right.
actually pursue getting pregnant.
So this was
through
your
a doctor.
5th pregnancy. So you had your
2, 4, yes, 5th.
So you
pregnancy.
had your first 2 miscarriages, then you had your 2 boys.
Yes.
And then this is your 5th pregnancy. And
Yes.
what happened?
Again, about that 9, 10, 11, 12 week span, I miscarried. And that one was a tough one, because not that the other 2 weren't tough either.
Right.
And you would think that, I've got 2 kids, so this one shouldn't bother me because I've got 2.
Right.
That's a lie.
Yeah.
And I would
again,
hear that from people.
Different shaped hole.
Yes. I would hear that from people. Well, you just need to be blessed that you've got, be happy you've got 2. I'm thrilled I got 2,
Right.
but I wanted this one too.
Right.
So.
And I want my 2 that's in heaven.
And I want my 2, well-meaning friends, but.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you have a 3rd miscarriage, 5th pregnancy, 3rd miscarriage.
Yes.
Where did this kind of take you emotionally? Because I would imagine, like, for me, I don't know if I'd be able to handle, I've had one. I even say, I've even told my husband, I just don't know that I could handle another one.
It's emotionally daunting.
It's literally heartbreak.
Yeah.
I feel like my heart was taken out of my chest.
Yeah.
And so where did it leave you emotionally?
Again, it left me, created another hole, and hope stolen. That's how I kind of viewed it. But I had made a decision I will tell you, I did not pray about it, but I was like, forget it. I'm not doing this anymore. And I called and made the appointment for Roy to go get his vasectomy done, because I just didn't want to go. I couldn't do it again. I couldn't do the be happy and, and then go through all the physical changes that you go through, even at the beginning of your pregnancy. Your body is doing stuff.
Try to not be happy because you're like, I don't know if I can be happy.
Right, right. Because
you're excited, but
in the back of my head, I always had that little, this could end.
So at what point did you guys decide, like, so you just decided this is it, we've got to...
Yeah,
we just emotionally.
I couldn't handle. I could not go through another loss. I just couldn't.
So I'm going to ask you a really hard question that I know that a lot of women, and I've found myself even asking, is why do you think God allowed it to happen?
I don't know that
because that's what you hear. A lot of people say, "I don't know what God let this happen." You hear that question.
I would not even say that God allowed it to happen.
So explain that thought process.
Okay, because we live in a broken world. We don't live in Eden, where nothing like this ever happened. Mm-hmm. We live in a physically degrading, or I don't know if degrading is the word I'm looking for, but we live in a
broken world.
Yeah, but we live in a world where things just don't always go like how we want them to go, but our bodies are not perfect. So when things happen, they happen. I really don't believe that God, quote unquote, allowed it to happen. Mm-hmm. It's just something that physically happened. And
he does say he knows the number of our days.
He does. And so I'm not, I got the thing that was like, oh, well, they just needed more angels in heaven. No, I didn't
right.
Like that
you
either.
get all the, and we'll dive into that, but we get all the things that people say.
Right.
But it is a hard question because, and especially for someone that necessarily hasn't had a relationship with God or hasn't come into relationship.
It can make you very angry.
It's a very common question to say, why?
Right.
Why God? I mean, how many, we ask them about that, about our jobs, and so definitely having a child in your belly and experiencing the physical changes and then to not have that anymore.
Right.
That's a common question to ask.
Absolutely. Had you asked me during the midst of all that, I probably would, Kristen, honestly have a different answer than what I have now.
Right. And maybe an answer we might not want to say out here.
Well, no, I have a different perspective.
Right.
About it. I don't believe that God allowed or disallowed for it to happen. Mm-hmm. It was something that I think we blame God so many times for things that happen. And I'm not saying it's not in his control, but we blame him because we didn't get what we wanted.
But look at where we're sitting now,
Yeah.
That God's going to use everything to glorify him in the good. And I'm not saying he did it on purpose to sit us here.
No.
But I can't tell you how many conversations that I've had, and I know you have had with women, that this is just something that is not talked about in depth.
Right.
And so I'm going to pause there.
Okay.
And we're going to switch focuses, and we're going to talk about healing.
Okay.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Now What with Kristen Comstock. Be sure to turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next episode. See you next time.